everyone, Michael B. the Game Genie here, and on today's video we're going to be taking a look at the new X-Men 3/4 scale home arcade from Arcade1Up. That's right guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the recently released X-Men Arcade1Up Cabinet. After a very frustrating pre-order experience with Walmart Canada, I found this unit in store at the Brick and finally added it to my Genie-cade. I'm a huge beat-em-ups fan, and this particular cabinet hits that sweet spot of when I was frequenting the arcades heavily as a kid, and I have extremely fond memories of playing the 6-player version at my local arcade. Let's find out if this cabinet brings that nostalgia factor for me, and if I think it's worth your home arcade dollar. Arcade1Up have brought so many of my favorite classic arcade games home in the 3/4 scale, but this is certainly one that was on my beat-em-ups Mount Rushmore, Konami's X-Men. I vividly remember walking into the arcade and seeing the larger-than-life 6-player cabinet and only dreaming of having something like this at home that I could play whenever I wanted. While of course it would be unrealistic to expect a flat-packed, sensible 6-player cabinet, we are getting a 4-player design here, modeled after the 4-player arcade cabinet. To be honest, I am almost out of room in my arcade and never have 6 people over at once, so no big deal, but I certainly would have dug if they could have done the double screen somehow. This 4-player cabinet has a brand new form factor that we have seen on the other 4-player releases, Simpsons and Turtles, these past few weeks, and I had some initial concerns that they would have similar problems to the legacy cabinets, but I'm happy to report this is not the case. The new shape is great and certainly more reminiscent of what a real arcade would look like. That's one of the reasons I choose Arcade1Up when I could easily play some of these games on a multicade. It's that they tug on those nostalgia strings, and when they can further blur the line between an at-home toy to 3/4 recreation, it entices me that much more. The art is fantastic with that iconic side art from the original 4 and 6-player arcade showcasing the lineup of characters you can use in the game. Fun fact, these were supposed to be the same characters on the iconic Fox cartoon, but for whatever reason the cartoon changed its cast and legal battles ensued. Look it up if you ever get a chance. The art on the marquee for this game is so cool, as the iconic X-Men logo is off-center to the side while Wolverine can be found on the other, while the very cool X-Men logo background can be seen in purple just like on the control panel. Unfortunately, the marquee is one area where I am disappointed with this machine. While they nailed the art in my opinion, minus the Konami logo being replaced with the Marvel logo, there is some significant hotspot action happening in the center of the marquee, which makes it a little washed out. I guess they outsourced to a provider who used a very light vinyl or cheap ink for the marquee, which is disappointing because the rest of the machine is just so pretty. It's a shame that a focal point like a lit marquee has quality issues like this, especially at the new price point. One thing I do like is with the new shape of these side panels, the marquee has great placement with no wings like on the legacy cabinets, and again looks more like a real cabinet would. The screen looks great. I'm sure it's the same BOE monitor we have seen since Wave 3, but for some reason everything looks just so good on this monitor. The colors are super vibrant and the graphics are crisp. For those of you who prefer scanlines, they have those in the options as well, but I prefer my sharp pixels. The viewing angles are pretty good too, with clear viewing angles while both sitting and standing. I had some concerns with the new form factor. The top of the screen would be cut off while standing, like with the legacy cabinets, but luckily the combination of the screen being more angled and the marquee coming further out to the edges creates a great viewing angle, reminiscent of how good it was with the old swan neck design. There is some issues with side viewing angles and the way the side panel is slanted, but it doesn't impact gameplay unless you are extremely tall. The bezel looks great and recreates the bezel from the original arcade, with the exception of the giant Marvel logo like on the marquee. The control panel is epic. I talked about the art I love so much on the marquee, and it covers the entire body of the control panel here. They do try and recreate the original control panel from the 4-player cabinet, but several compromises had to be made to accommodate the Arcade1Up style. First of all, the control panel itself doesn't feature the large X-Men logo in the center of the control panel, instead making space for all their Arcade1Up necessary buttons, live button, and new headphone jack. Before anyone asks, the buttons and sticks are pretty much the same as they have always been. They are okay, they will get the job done, but they aren't the highest quality. Also, it is worth noting that the player 4 buttons are in such a weird formation and location. If you're going to play 4-player on this cab, you better call shotgun on any other spot. Next up is that each player has an additional action button, as X-Men Arcade was a 3-button game, and an additional button had to be added to accommodate the fighting game Avengers Galactic Storm. It's not a huge deal, but I did find it in an awkward place during X-Men, and I got lost trying to find the right buttons on my first few playthroughs. This is, however, my first 4-player cabinet with a light-up control deck. I think it looks super cool, however the lights don't really get all the way to the edges, and the strength of the light is really focused in the middle. These are certainly more noticeable on a 2-player cab, but the light still reflects pretty well on the 4-player deck protector and is a cool addition. Speaking of add-ons that some people find unnecessary, this cabinet comes bundled with an X-Men branded stool that includes the same great background artwork from the control deck with the picture of Cyclops on the stool. For those of you who have only experienced the stools not bundled with the cabinets, these have exactly the same comfort level as the other stools previously released by Arcade1Up. The main difference is the art and the fact that these stools are not adjustable and only set for the highest setting. I really like the Arcade1Up stools and have a little collection of them going, so I'm not mad at its inclusion. As we move down the cabinet, we get to the kickplate, and this is usually an area I cover but never really care about. My main concern has always been uniformity, but this time they have added these molded coin doors to the cabinet, and I absolutely love them. It's amazing how such a small inclusion makes such a huge difference, once again blurring the lines between toy and arcade recreation. These are perfect, well 95%, as there is just one thing missing, and honestly it's something I think they intended to do, but backed off of. If you look specifically at the coin slot on the coin door, you will notice the material is transparent, or at least semi-transparent, and I fully believe the intention was to include LED lights, which would have made these perfect. Sadly, they weren't included, but with the transparent coin slots, this is a pretty simple mod for anybody who wants to try. Last but not least is the riser, and this one is pretty good looking. While not an extension of the arcade machine itself, which is something Arcade1Up have been doing lately, this one features that great X-Men background art and X-Men logo, which looks like an extrapolation from the marquee, while the front is black with Cyclops on the front shooting his optic beam into the top of the marquee that flows really well into the red trim. From top to bottom, this is a beautiful arcade to add to your collection that is a fairly accurate recreation of the original, with some exceptions that are completely understandable to make this work in the Arcade1Up format. Of course, looks are only so important, and people want to know about the games and how they perform, so let's check them out and find out if the performance matches the aesthetic. The X-Men Arcade1Up Cabinet sure is pretty, and it's great to see this Konami classic beat-em-up brought home. But Arcade1Up rarely does one-game cabinets, so what other arcade gems can be found on this cabinet? Obviously more great Konami beat-em-ups, right? Surprisingly no, and the secondary included games are from the Data East Marble Library. This is why the cabinet has such heavy Marble branding, as it's more of a Marble cabinet than a Konami cabinet. The other two games are Captain America and the Avengers, which is an awesome beat-em-up that I am very familiar with from playing on consoles, and Avengers Galactic Storm, which is a fighting game that is, well, it's on the cabinet. First off, let's talk about X-Men, and man am I ever happy to have this game in my arcade finally. I love arcade beat-em-ups. No genre brings me back to my childhood in the arcade like beat-em-ups, and especially the Konami licensed ones like this. I know most people complain about replayability with the arcade beat-em-ups, but for me I can play them all the time. There is something so rewarding about turning off your brain and just plowing through the swarms and swarms of enemies thrown in your direction. If that doesn't interest you and you want more of a challenge for replayability, you could always limit the number of quarters you play with and try and get good. Another thing that will help with replay factor is this cabinet is Wi-Fi connected, so now not only can you play multiplayer in your home, but you can also play with other cabinet owners across the world. I would love to show you some gameplay from an online game, but as of yet, I have been unsuccessful trying to log into one. I would say maybe it's my internet, but I have every other Wi-Fi connected multiplayer Arcade1Up and have never had a glitch getting online, and still don't, so I think either this game doesn't connect the same way, or something is wrong with my antenna or PCB. Time will tell, and unfortunately, I have to submit a ticket. One other thing you may notice with this cabinet is the sound seems a little off. There are times where it seems like certain game sounds get drowned out by other things happening in the game, and the overall sound quality is kinda poor with very light bass. I mean, it's loud, but it doesn't have the same oomph the cabinets from previous generations have. I have been told it's not a different speaker from previous generations, so hopefully it's just a setting that can be adjusted with a Wi-Fi update, because I like my cabinets to have that heavy bass. Captain America and the Avengers is great, but it's not your traditional beat-em-up game. I know it might not be exactly what you were looking for initially, but stick with it because the game has charm and is genuinely fun if you can see past its wrinkles. First thing is, the characters are tiny, like really tiny. I have never had an issue with the 17-inch monitors they include with these cabinets, but even I can use an upgrade with the small characters in this game. The other thing to note is that you are locked into the character you will use by the joystick you choose. I typically play on the 4-player cabs from the player 2 or 3 location, meaning that I miss out on Vision and Hawkeye and have no way to use them unless I play in a position I am not typically comfortable playing from. Once again, I cannot comment on the Wi-Fi online play for this game because I cannot get it to work. Last up is Avengers Galactic Storm, and for those looking for a change from the beat-em-up genre, I have good news for you, as this is a Marvel-themed fighting game. Just not a good one. It isn't bad by any means, just kinda mid, as the kids say. The graphics are a little rough and definitely are a product of its time, but they do the job and the game is fun enough. It just isn't anything special. I played through the story mode the first night I got the cab, and honestly, never need to try it again. While I provided a brief overview of the games and how they perform with the cabinet, the old saying is the proof is in the pudding, so let me include some gameplay from all 3 games so you can judge for yourself. So guys, that's my look at the X-Men Arcade1Up 4-player cabinet. So far I'm fairly happy with my purchase, as they did a really good job recreating the look of the original 4-player arcade, and I'm having a bunch of fun playing through these games. I say I'm fairly happy and definitely would recommend this cabinet. However, there are some areas of concern I have to address, such as the marquee being washed out, which takes away from the overall aesthetic of the cabinet. The sound is underwhelming, with some bass missing compared to previous cabinets, and last but not least, the issues I'm having with Wi-Fi really take away a major selling point from the cabinet, as I can't play these awesome games online with friends, but hopefully that is a machine-specific issue related to my machine and doesn't affect anyone else. Guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think of the Arcade1Up X-Men cabinet? Is this one you're interested in picking up? Thank you so much for watching. This is MichaelBtheGameGenie, and I'll talk to you next time.
The baby point.
She knows.